When I was a kid, there were a couple weird things that happened. Well, they weren't really weird, but they are one of those hazards of the road that you can never really fully prepare for. And as we're entering hunting season and whatnot, the official state mammal of Pennsylvania is on the move and moving towards the busy roads. In the early 90s, there was, I believe, a Manchester group known as Jesus Jones who had a hit song, Do You Feel Real? And for whatever reason, I liked the song at the time. I was a pretty young kid, and we were driving around in an 88 Corsica. I was in the back, the rest of my family was in the car, and my dad hit a deer. And several months later, Jesus Jones playing the same song on the radio, and we hit another deer out in the Brookville area, if I remember correctly. From that point on, if that song would come on in the car, my mom or dad would either change it to another station very quickly or just shut the radio off immediately for fear that the sounds of Jesus Jones were attracting deer to the vehicle. And that's one of these few weird road deer stories that we have for the evening. And I am here with Bond again, and we're gonna have some stories of deer. So one thing, if you're on the turnpike, that you probably don't want to do is make a 180-degree turn on the turnpike. I've not heard this story, but you started it out by saying that. What happened?
Okay, so this was about this time of year. I was 17 years old, and I was coming back from Beaver County. I think we were either playing a show or I had some kind of social event. Something was going on. I can't remember what it
was. This you and your brother in the car?
This was just me.
You?
This
you?
was
Okay.
Just me. Which makes me think it wasn't a show because I feel like
you would have been with somebody
else.
I
feel like Dan would have been there or something. But regardless, it was like 2:00 in the morning, which means I was out after curfew. And I remember like taking the turnpike home instead of going through all the back roads.
Right.
Back to where I lived. And I'm coming through Beaver County on the turnpike. I don't remember being like tired or anything.
Yeah.
I was just driving and there was nobody else on the road. In the deer's defense, they didn't jump out in front of me or anything. They were just suddenly, I can remember it vivid as day, 6 deer in the right-hand lane, which I was in.
Right.
And I remember seeing them and having the distinct thought.
So you're eastbound on the turnpike.
Yes, I'm eastbound on the turnpike.
Heading towards Cranberry.
Heading towards Cranberry Township. And suddenly there's 6 deer in the right-hand lane. I remember thinking, they can't be in the right-hand lane. That's where I'm going.
Well, you need to get in the left-hand lane to pass them.
But
right.
But that's what my small 17-year-old brain thought was just like, they can't be there.
Right. It was 2 a.m.
Yeah,
I think you're sleep deprived.
Brain. What are they doing? You know.
Right.
And so, like an inexperienced 17-year-old driver, I just hit the brakes, which is granted.
That was probably the best thing you could have done.
I locked the brakes. I didn't because I saw them from what was probably a good distance, and I would have if anyone out there knows how I drive, I may have been going 60. I don't drive very fast.
Well, and you're out past curfew. I'm sure you are hyper vigilant.
Exactly. Yeah. So
at this moment.
Yeah, I was.
You just got your license on.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was not speeding by any stretch, but so I locked the brakes and turned left, which is problematic because I started to immediately skid, and I remember the headlights of my '94 Taurus wagon looking at the Jersey barrier as my car is now heading that direction.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I'd rather hit the deer after this. That's again what my little 17-year-old brain's thinking. I should probably go for the squishy things, not the not the concrete. And I turned the wheel back to the right, And at this point, I completely spin 180 degrees, and the car kind of screeches to a halt in the right-hand lane. In the right-hand lane.
I would love to have seen like
Not-
an overhead of this.
I know. On the right-hand lane, not off the road, in between the white lines, stopped facing the deer now, because I literally just went the whole way around them. And there's all this smoke from the
They're
tires
impressed.
screeching. They couldn't care less that just happened. They looked bothered, maybe, that like I was bothering them. I don't know. Luckily, there was nobody, like literally nobody else on the road.
Right, because otherwise, I mean, you're staring them head on.
Exactly, yeah. So it was very, very dangerous, and luckily I had enough of my wits about me to immediately back up and switch direction and be facing the right way and also off the road. You
Right.
know? And it probably took me half an hour to compose myself, because like anyone who's ever been in a situation like that, like it really rattles you.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, like, how did I manage to miss all of those deer, the barrier, and the guardrail? I don't know if it was some, like, karma that the deer were giving off to say, like, hey, this guy's trying not to hit us.
Right.
Let's help him out. Let's use some of our whitetail magic to help this guy out.
Right.
But so that was my first. And
Wrinkled their nose.
Yeah.
Wrinkled their nose.
Yeah, and it's like his people always say, like, oh, well, just watch out for deer, you know?
Yeah.
That's like a thing
well,
people say
deer
around
exist
here.
almost as a reason for being late to things.
Exactly. Yeah. You say, oh, well, there's deer out.
There were deer out.
Yeah.
Well, actually, funny you say that, and this pertains to elk, but I met a woman the other week, and we were talking about elk. She's originally from the St. Mary's area.
Okay, yeah.
And she, in her senior year, she spoke about, I entered class a half hour late, and I basically said, there was an elk on the road. And the teacher went, oh, okay.
Yeah. I imagine up in that area, that's a very common. Deer are one thing, elk are a whole.
They're a whole, like, it's if you hit an elk, it's like hitting a small school bus.
Basically.
And all this time, too, I've only ever seen one elk, and I've been so incredulous as to their existence only because I'm up on 555, I'm up in Potter County, Elk County, the eponymous county of the elk, and I had yet to see one until last summer, late summer, early spring, I think it was, or rather, late summer, early autumn, I think it was. I was coming down, I was by the Austin City Dam, where probably the second most famous dam disaster in the Commonwealth history, of course, behind only Johnstown, and I come to an elk. It's just standing in the road. I'm calling it some bad things.
Yeah.
I'm shouting at it because the horn wasn't doing anything.
Yeah.
And it's like pretending not to hear me.
Yeah.
You know, like how people are. And, you know, I learned that one of the names for elk was actually wapiti or wapiti, which I think is like an onomonic pronunciation of like what they sound like when you hit them. But I think they should probably more aptly be called thud, because that thing was massive.
Yeah, they're big.
But what I liked about it was not subtle.
No,
I have a subtle deer story. I've only hit 3 deer. Well, and in fairness, 2 hit me because one ran into the side of the car, another one ran directly at me and dented the hood of a new vehicle that I bought just months before, and I drove around for the rest of that vehicle's life with this dent in the hood as a reminder. And the thing that upset me was I had slowed down because I had just seen the deer crossing and it was hunting season. I thought, oh, they're probably on the move.
Yeah, they're out running.
My senior year of high school, we had to do, you went to the same high school as I did, we had to do a senior project, which was a joke.
Huge joke.
It was like playing pinball, because you would write a paper about having thought about writing a draft of another paper, and you would get 10 million points for it. Mm-hmm. So it was worthless, but that was something else.
That's a whole other topic.
Anyhow, I didn't have a printer at my home at that time, and I did have a computer, but I'm at home, I'm going to be distracted. I went to my friend's house to type up the actual report, and I printed it out. I printed out like 3 copies just in case. I, of course, didn't do any of this till really late at night. I didn't get home till around 11:30, 12:30 at night, somewhere in there, because I remember I was laying on my couch, which served as my bed at the time. I don't think I had a bed at that point. It was pretty weird that, I guess, now that I look back on it. but I realized, oh no, I left my hard disk in my friend's computer. This is how dated this is.
Yeah.
And we needed to turn in a hard disk with our paper, and that was how they were going to tell whether we had plagiarized or not. And so
I do remember that.
you okay?
Yeah.
Well, then the predicament I'm in,
Yeah.
because I've got to submit this paper with the disc tomorrow, and I can't go. I left this at my friend's house, so I get back. I jump into my dad's car, which was the nicer ride, and I drive back down to my friend's place, which is just in the neighboring town, but it's outside of town in the woods a bit. It's only like 7-8 miles away, but it's on Route 19, and I get to this housing plan. My friend lived in a housing plan, and I couldn't get in. He wasn't up. I didn't have a cell phone at the time. He didn't have a cell phone at the time. I'm knocking on their door gently. Nothing. I'm throwing rocks at his window. Nothing. And finally I broke into my friend's house. That's how much I cared about school, about graduating, that I broke in through his basement door, and I came up the basement steps, and I went into their den, and I ejected my disc from the computer, and sure enough it was right there, and I snuck out and locked the door behind me, and I'm driving home, and I am tired. It's about 2 a.m. at this point.
Yeah, no, but yeah, you're probably tired, but you're feeling like the romantic arc of the evening's drama has
the party was crashing.
Yeah,
at
like
this
like,
point.
like it has waned. Yeah.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Yes. The wind is
Yeah.
out from my
Yeah.
wings, and Bette
Yeah.
Midler was nowhere to rescue me. And it's like 2 a.m. I've got to go to school in a few hours. I am what I call time traveling, which is where like you nod, and when your head comes up, 5 minutes have gone by.
Yeah.
And this is like the worst time for anybody to be driving. A sleep-deprived driver is worse than a drunk driver
yeah.
in most cases.
Yeah.
I'm on Route 19 heading north back home to where I was living in Harmony at the time, and Route 19 splits at some point. The lanes divide, and then they come back together just like a quarter or a half mile down the road. All of a sudden, I see a deer maybe 50 yards off, and the next thing I know is there is a big deer head on my windshield, and it makes this noise. That's what it sounded like. And then it sneezes on the windshield, and so now there's deer mucus all over the windshield, and I am wide awake, and I drive a couple, like a mile and a half into a sandwich shop where I was working at the time, and I jumped out of the car. I used the key to the sandwich shop to unlock the door to run to the bathroom, because I've got to go to the bathroom really bad now, all of a sudden. And I come out and I inspect the car. I've got a street lamp for light, as they were intended. I don't see any blood. There's no dents. That was my first fear, is a dent. No dents, no blood, no chipped paint, no sign of any sort of collision. There is deer snot all over the car. So I jump in the car, and I'm doing like the windshield washer thing, and I decide, well, I've got to see what happened. So I drive back.
Well, because you don't want to leave a maimed deer on the side of the road.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I drive back to the spot. I hunted around. It's not a big area.
Yeah.
There are no deer prints. There is no sign that deers ever existed beyond the abstract. But yet there's this deer. It was the grossest thing. But honestly, it was like I was so drowsy that there's a deer 50 yards off. I think I'm slowing down, and then the deer, like that, is on the windshield. And what I think happened, I think I was in the car and I was time traveling.
Yeah.
And that I just coasted, just having the engine idling in gear, that the car just snuck up on the deer and surprised it mid-sneeze. And that's what happened. Like, that is like, I'm stealthily in the Honda Accord coming down and just blowing this deer's mind as it blows its nose all over the white tissue Accord. that was the weirdest
That's incredible.
deer story. Now, you had one about you and your brother.
Yeah.
I haven't heard this one either.
Okay, this one ends because both of our deer stories so far have like relatively happy endings.
Oh yeah, no, that was the happiest ending of any.
It could have had.
Right.
I mean,
That's how I described it too. I remember being
Yeah.
profoundly happy about it.
Yes. So this one doesn't have a great lead up or even conclusion necessarily. It was
That's
just
the best type of
it was just an
story.
example of like we said earlier. I imagine it's this way all across Pennsylvania and probably a large portion of the eastern seaboard. Is just you say watch out for deer,
Right.
just this time of year. And I remember me and my brother were heading somewhere, and I remember my mother saying, "Watch out for deer." Watch out
That's
for
what
deer.
moms say.
Yeah. So and again, I don't drive very fast at all.
But you
so-
live in the woods.
Yeah.
And you live on a real windy road.
Yeah,
And,
yeah. So like deer, like you kind of can't drive that fast because they're just so common. But so I'm driving my mother's. It's another Taurus wagon, next gen.
It was your family loved them.
My mother loves Taurus wagons. But so I'm driving that car for some reason at the time. I can't remember why I was driving that one, not one of my own.
You say like one of your own as though you have a fleet. Of
Yeah,
vehicles
exactly. Yeah,
already.
Whenever I was in my early 20s, I had 5 or 6 cars. Yeah. But regardless,
You and your brother in the car.
Me and my brother in the car. We come over this hill, this little knoll, and as we're coming down, we see a deer running across the road. We slow down, even though it's well in front of us. Everyone knows if you see one deer running, there's probably more behind it.
Rules to live by.
Exactly, yeah. We slow down to maybe 10, 15 miles an hour. We weren't going fast at all at that point. But as this deer is crossing, there's this white work van coming the other direction that I guess did not see the deer.
Okay, so it's just flying along.
Flying along.
What road were you on again?
This is on Franklin.
Franklin Road.
Yeah.
Okay, so the
Yeah.
windy
Yeah.
back road that separates Evans City, connects Evans City to Cranberry Township. It goes from Evans City to
Warrendale.
228.
Yeah, well, it keeps going into Warrendale.
Oh, that's right.
Over the turnpike.
Okay.
Technically, but anyway, so like this van is coming, this work van, and just pegs the deer, probably going 40 miles an hour. Launches the deer into the side of our car, and like the deer like hits like the driver's side of our car, and like rolls back kind of thing.
And how are you and your brother handling this?
Oh my gosh. We screamed like little children, basically, like because it was just so unexpected.
Right.
And, like you don't realize like to watch like a 120-pound animal just like ragdoll like that
Yeah.
isn't something like you're used to actually seeing, And so we're just like just like screaming. We're right near a plan, so literally after that happens, we pull over kind of thing. The deer, lo and behold, is gone. Just like kind of with your
Poof.
deer.
It's the whitetail
gone.
magic.
It's gone. Because we went back to try and find it, because we're like, this deer has to be dead.
Right.
I'm pretty sure it died shortly thereafter, because again, the truck hit it going pretty darn fast.
Right.
But the only evidence, in your case was snot, in our case, there was a little crack in the running board with a little bit of deer hair stuck in it.
Huh.
So just this little crack. Like I said, right away we couldn't find the deer, but yeah, that was really unnerving.
Well, we mentioned it being this time of the year, a lot of us think about, well, when hunters are out, you've got to be extra cautious because that's when the deer are moving a lot because they're being driven around. And like I said, I mentioned I'd seen the deer crossing sign the one time, driving in a newer car. I'd only had it since July. November comes around, deer season's out, and I say, oh my gosh, I have to slow down. And it's as soon as I start slowing down, this deer comes diagonally out of the field and runs directly head on into my vehicle. And I'm clearly still bitter about the whole experience. This was some 6 years ago. You and I, you hunt, and I don't that often, but my father-in-law a couple years back really wanted me to come out. His dad had just passed away, and I think he was feeling nostalgic for it. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I'll go out. I don't mind hunting. I did it when I was younger, predominantly like small game, and I liked going bird hunting, but it was never like a big thing for me. It was just something to do. I never liked going out on opening day.
Yeah.
But we have two quick stories because you were out with me that day. I invited you along, and we had a good time.
Yeah, it was a great day. Yeah,
it was a great day. Despite I think part of the reason I liked it so much is because it was just miserable out.
Oh, which are the best?
Because you feel best when you return from that, but also it kept a lot of the yahoos out, and so really, I wanted to kind of talk about you almost refused to go out on opening day anymore because of an experience. And so there's an experience of a complete disregard of sensibility, and then there was the story of our day. So, tell us about your experience. And you were up in the Allegheny National Forest on opening day one year, and this is what turned you off.
Yeah, so I was up there, and as I said, normally I only hunt either private properties or some of the state game lands, which in this part of the state are kind of like small little pockets here and there.
Right.
They're usually maybe only a few hundred acres. They're relatively small. But this one year I was out with some friends and their family, and we were up in the Allegheny National Forest,
which is the only national forest in the Commonwealth.
Correct.
Actually.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And we were in a large section which was open to hunting and everything. So opening day, I was hunkered down on the side of this hill below a very large oak tree, and kind of huddled up in the root ball, almost kind of thing, looking over a small clearing. And I'm out there probably 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. You just gotten settled down.
Yeah, I just gotten settled down.
Because you can't fire anything until the sun's up.
Correct. Yeah. So I waited there for a while and didn't see a thing, didn't hear anything, because all the folks I was with were probably about a quarter mile away. I thought I was out there by myself, and whenever it started to get real close to light, and this was probably 6:30 in the morning.
Yeah,
it was just
sometime between 6:30 and 7.
Yeah, just before light probably actually happened. I hear all this noise behind me. I just decide not to move. I'm just hunkered down. I don't move. And walking past me in the woods come, I would say, between a dozen and 15 hunters, which is way, way larger than the driving parties are allowed to be.
Well, and the thing is, too, driving parties, I think in the Commonwealth it's 6. Do they do that by area?
I think in certain areas it's up to 6, but I think in most it's honestly 3 or 4.
Okay.
I think it's not a lot.
And again, it's been a few years,
Yeah.
and usually I've never been in a party larger than 4 people ever.
Yeah,
ever.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so when you told me that, I thought, wow, that's a lot of people to start with. I didn't even think about the legality.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because the most I've ever been is usually 3 or 4.
And then too, driving, you don't do that until it's like the Hail Mary pass.
Exactly. Yeah.
For a lot of guys.
And these guys were doing it. They were all driving before dawn even.
Right.
Which again is illegal. Like I said, I was hunkered down behind this root ball, and I just sat there. I did not move a muscle. I was silent. I think what you're supposed to do is probably to stand up and say, hey, kind of thing, just because you're a hunter.
Yeah.
But because there's so many of them, and I'm like, okay, these guys are already doing some nefarious activity. The last thing I want to do is move, and give them a target, because, again, people who hunt in Pennsylvania know, you always hear about these wackos that just shoot at movement, basically. So I stay there, and they all walk past me, never notice me, kind of thing.
That's the craziest thing to me.
Yeah, they didn't even see me.
They
did not even see me. And
because you have to have a certain percentage of your torso and your head covered in the fluorescent orange. And I know your gear, and you've got.
I'm 100. Yeah, I have orange bib overalls.
I would ask you how much more orange.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, none more orange. I'm completely decked out in orange. There was no camo on me at all. But yeah, so they got past me once they were about 200 or 300 yards past me. I just got up and I walked out. I was just like, I'm not messing with this again.
Did you encounter the rest of your party?
I got back to where one of them was set up at. Kind of told them what happened, and because they have hunted that area before,
right?
And they acted like it wasn't that big of a they acknowledged that it wasn't a good thing, but they're like, oh yeah, that happens around here. And in my head, I'm just like,
why would you come out here?
Why would you come out here then?
What good is standing around here when there's already people flushing everything
exactly.
away?
It was just it was a very I just didn't quite get it, and I feel like a lot of those folks are the people who go out to hunt just to harvest
Right.
deer.
Well, and the other thing is, like, you were put into a precarious situation
Yeah.
because if you had stood up, like you said, you were
Yeah.
afraid to do that out of fear that these people are going to shoot at anything that moves.
Yeah, or makes
But
sound. Yeah.
if you hadn't and they had noticed you,
Yeah.
now again, this is all hypothetical,
Mhm.
but I mean, just you can't. It's hypothetical to say that something bad would have happened, would
Yeah.
you, in either or situation.
Yeah.
But it's also just as hypothetical that everything would have been safe and whatnot. I would have been, and you haven't gone back up the hunt in that area since, have you?
No, I've been back up towards that area, but only to bow hunt.
Okay.
Because I feel like
That's usually a more specialty crowd.
Yeah,
it's
it's
inherently more risky.
yeah, and it's there's less people out for archery. Again, it's yeah.
Well, I remember I've only gone out on opening day once, and it was with you and my father-in-law and your brother. And it was just pouring down rain that morning, and I felt uncomfortable only because my father-in-law has hunted this land for years now, and in the time, this is up by Stoneborough, in the time that he began, there's been some building that's taken place there, and I remember feeling like, oh my gosh, it's almost like we're in a neighborhood. And so I was being especially cautious about being aware of my surroundings, doing the reasonable and responsible thing.
Yeah, because I mean, like for where we were set up at, we could never see other houses, but you knew they were.
Yeah, you
Out
knew they
there.
were there.
Yeah.
I knew Uncle's house was right around the corner. There was another one down the hill from where I was stationed, and there was one up the hill. So I remember towards the evening we were doing a drive through some cornfields and whatnot, and at one point you were driving. I believe it was you or your brother
Well, yeah, I think
was driving.
Yeah, I think me and my brother were driving.
I was on a tree line
Yeah.
and at the head of a trail, a deer path, and then my father-in-law was at the corner, and he could see one field, two fields, and he was on the corner of that wood. And was it you who was driving, or was it your brother, or what was going on?
I think it was just me at that point.
I think so,
I
too.
think so, but this was a few years ago at this point. So.
But you were across one other field
Correct.
then
Yeah.
at the other tree line, so you can kind of get a lay of the land. So there's a square piece of wood that comes around like an L-shaped, two fields, and then on the other side of that L, there's a tree line. My father-in-law is on the corner. I'm in the middle of the trees, and you are across a field on the other tree line. A deer came running by, and it needed to have, I think it was 6 points. It was a 4.
Need to have 3 up on one side.
3 on
not
one side,
including-
that's it.
not including the brow tine.
That's right. That's right. Explain what that is in case.
Basically, what it is like the deer have, usually have 2 antlers, and they need to have 3 tines pointing up. That does not include the one that's like right at the base of the,
right, because there's like a vertical before
correct.
it starts going over to the
Yes,
side, and
yes.
that's about that.
And that's basically to help in this area to like keep more.
You're taking out the older.
Yeah, you're taking out more mature deer, and we're not You're not harvesting the younger ones, basically.
Right.
So, and we all were aware of that law.
Right.
And it was pretty new, I think, at the time.
I can't answer that, to be honest, because this has been the first time I've gone out for deer in years.
Yeah.
This is actually the last time I've been out
Yeah.
as well. This deer comes running by, and I've got an eye on it, and it stops dead in front of me. But I'm counting. It's got everything. But I know there's a house on the hill behind it, and I'm shooting up, and I'm saying, I can't do it. I lowered the gun, and I go, damn. And it starts running off towards my father-in-law, and I'm like shouting at him, and but he never was able to get a good sight on it. But I remember that.
Yeah, I have a similar story from opening day. I think it was 2 or 3 years earlier than that. Again, the deer was coming through some brush, and I was probably 125, 150 yards from it, and looking through my binoculars, and again, I couldn't tell how many times it had, because it was in like the brush and everything, and by the time that it had cleared the brush and I could actually, for 100% certain, say, yes, this is a legal deer, it was too close to the top of a hill.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I mean, if I would have missed, I still would have hit the hill. But, like, I don't know what's over that hill. What if it hits a rock? And, like, you just don't know. It's not worth the risk. It's just not worth the risk.
And it's just the difference of mentality between... I mean, again, we are kind of personifying...
Mm-hmm.
Personifying is not the right word, but we're kind of putting a mentality on the people you saw that day. But that's one of the reasons why I don't go out. And I thought about doing black powder, going back out for birds in, because just to be in the woods.
Yeah.
And... the grouse, which are a terrifying animal when you stumble upon them. It's like a helicopter taking off.
Grouse and pheasant are a lot of fun.
Yeah, the first thing I ever went for was pheasant, and I've bagged a couple, and you know I've enjoyed myself. I've liked that, but I mean deer are quite a bit of work, but it's also because there's not the lottery for deer like there is for bear and whatnot.
And elk.
And because it's the big thing, a lot of people are in it for just the sporting aspect of it, which I guess just has an extremely limited appeal for me. And if that's the entirety of the appeal, I think it's a mentality that is more conducive to like some of the yahoos, like the people that you had seen up that day, because even like the lack of attention to their surroundings is demonstrated by their inability to see you, coupled with, one, if you know anything, you know that driving this early isn't your best play in the book.
Exactly.
And to do it with so many people, even if you weren't like so beyond the cusps of legality, it's just bad form.
Yeah, it's just bad form, No, and I think that's the thing too, is that kind of separates different types of outdoorsmen. Is like the thing we always say whenever we're fly fishing, it's not so much the catching, it's the going, you know?
Well, and then too, when you don't catch anything, you can talk about all the cool stuff you saw on the way when people ask you how the fishing has been.
Yeah.
Then they just assume, like you said, and your uncle who's a guide has said, it just, you know, well, they're going to think like you caught so much fish that you are unfazed by the sheer number of them.
Yeah, that's a little pro tip for everybody out there. When someone asks you how your fishing was, just talk about the birds. And everyone's going to think that, again, the fishing comes so easy. The birds are what's more interesting to talk about afterwards.
And I'll tell you what, somebody's going to email me about benefits of pre-dawn drives.
Oh, yeah, no. It's one of those things where, like, maybe I got the law wrong, you know, but I don't think I did. And maybe there is a tactical source for it, you know? Maybe it's a cultural thing. Maybe we just don't understand what that's about.
Reading about the Allegheny National Forest as much as I have, I do know that, and people don't accept this, but there are more deer in the Allegheny National Forest at the moment than were naturally sustainable to that area prior to the lumber industry coming through and clear-cutting that whole region. And you can't tell someone that. They won't buy it. I don't know if there have been any sort of National Forestry Services attempts to kind of rein in that population, but even if there were, I cannot imagine they would be doing it when hunting season's in. It seems like so redundant.
Well, yeah, because even around here down in Allegheny County, they've had those what they call deer calling.
Well, there was a very controversial one earlier this year. And it was just, all accounts suggest that it was just so poorly managed.
That's the impression that I got too.
This was in the Mount Lebanon area, I believe
so, yeah. Because they were becoming so detrimental to the area.
And Mount Lebanon is kind of it's one of the nicer, more upscale neighborhoods of the Pittsburgh's North Hill region.
Yeah. But that's the thing, is like because of how they've, you know, like you said, cultivated the land, you get these little pockets of forest with houses in between, which is perfect for whitetail. So as a result, the population booms, and it's really not healthy.
Right, they become their natural environments become restricted, while at the same time, these housing plans are providing easy access to easy food for them.
Yeah, so it really is kind of a double-edged sword.
Yeah,
where it's like it's great that we have this. They're able to sustain populations, but when they get too big, it's a very sad thing that has to happen.
Well, you know what? I just kind of thought, like, maybe if they just got big PA speakers and played Jesus Jones' "Do You Feel Real," they would be able to attract all these, because that's where we started.
That's really what it
when
is,
I was
yeah.
a kid. When I was a kid, anytime that song would come on, we were certain that it just attracted deer like a giant audio deer magnet, and we have gotten so far away from that story. But that's it.
That's it.